Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Cryptic Conversations. I'm your host, Tunez from the Crypt. We have another very special guest in store today. Today's guest is Tiffany Wylder. Tiffany is an authentic alignment coach dedicated to helping others heal and rediscover their authentic selves. With a background in psychology, behavioral science, and meditation, she embarked on a personal journey of self-discovery that led her to overcome a debilitating chronic illness and reclaim her own well-being. Driven by her own transformative experience, Tiffany has spent the past decade sharing her unique blend of intuitive insight and evidence-based practices with individuals around the world. Guiding them back to their innate state of embodied connection and alignment, she empowers them to feel safe in their bodies, connected to their hearts, and thrive in all aspects of life. Tiffany's vision is to plant the seeds of her teachings in the hearts of thousands, allowing them to embrace their distinct gifts, helping illuminate a brighter future in this ever-changing world. I'm excited to have Tiffany share her profound wisdom, transformative experiences, and practical guidance, guiding us all on a journey of healing and self-discovery. Welcome, Tiffany Wylder.
Thank you so much for having me. Lovely to be here.
Thanks for being here. So, we could dive right into it. Talk to me about your early life. Where did you grow up? Where did you go to school? What your family was like?
Sure. I grew up in Sydney in Australia. My family life was, I come from a family of five, my parents and two older siblings. And like so many of us, my parents did their best. They provided everything they could materially. It's funny because most of the clients I work with and the position I started from was like, I had a good childhood.
Okay.
But when I became unwell and had to start digging into my experiences and how they'd shaped me, I had to face a lot of the trauma that I'd experienced in my early childhood. And the realities of the system that I grew up in, not necessarily being the upbringing that I needed to support me in my emotional growth.
Yeah.
I feel like I skirt around that a little bit because I'm so grateful for my parents and I appreciate them so much.
Yeah.
Like most of our parents, they didn't have the opportunity to heal from their experiences coming up.
Yeah.
And so despite their best intentions, a lot of that generational trauma gets passed along.
Yeah, that's beautiful. So what about, where did you go to school? And where'd you go to school?
So I went to a private Jewish day school. I come from a Jewish background.
Okay.
And it was quite a small community, which is interesting in that I never really felt like I fit into that space. I did well at school. I had friends, but I always felt a little bit different. It is quite an insular community.
Yeah. And
while now as an adult, I've delved more into the mystical side of my roots.
Yeah.
The dogma of the religion, I never connected to it even from a little person. So I felt like a bit of an outcast, or like I had to mask a lot to fit in even at school.
Oh, wow.
And even from being a little person, I was I've been a deep thinker since the day dot. You know, when I was 7, I was stressing out about Bosnia and the fact that, why do they make so much fuss about people in the Western world, but nobody even knows the names of the people in these countries, which was, a lot for a 7-year-old to try and tackle. Yeah. But obviously with other little kids, I had to meet them at their level. And a lot of that, I think, has to do with the sensitivity that I had but didn't understand. And what I've now come to know is claircognizant. So there's no, but I didn't have any structure around context or context for that. Yeah. But that was, so I was a bit of a dark, interesting kid, but with this mask of like, everything's okay, be okay, everything has to be okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I can relate to you 100%. Being a sensitive individual myself as an early kid, I was the same way. So you said it was a private Jewish school, you said?
That's right.
And so what about college?
So I went to university here and studied psych. Well, at first I went to started a few things and didn't see them through. At first I studied philosophy and music. I have a background in music. But then later on went back to university and studied psychology.
Nice. So how would you say that your studies helped shape you into the person you are today?
Well, interestingly, in a whole lot of different ways, because my first experiences at university, I got really frustrated because I felt like for 12 years of schooling, I'd been spoon-fed ideas and had to just repeat them back. And I had
Yeah.
expectation that I'd get into university and be like able to expand and express and dive into things in the way that I wanted to.
Yeah.
When I was in the first experience of university, it was met with like, oh, that's an interesting idea, but try it this way. And I was just
wow.
no, I'm not doing that anymore. And so I left that course. But then when I went back to study psychology, I did find it so fascinating. I'm really passionate about behavioral science and psychology, and really dove into understanding how the mind works and how it shapes us. And obviously had some of that, the healer trying to heal himself, you can't start coming through.
Yeah.
But then also felt like, is this path for me to become a psychologist what I really want? Because I recognize that a lot of the science takes about 10 years to get from the study to the practitioner room. And it's so regulated for so many good reasons, but it means that you can't innovate in the same way that I felt would be a fit for me. I moved on from, I studied psychology and then didn't do the master's and the PhD that I'd need to be a psychologist. Then started to study yoga and meditation and Eastern philosophy, and felt like there was just more room there for me to, well, that's not quite right, because I love the line between the spiritual and the scientific. I love how so much of the science now is proving what these ancient cultures have been practicing for thousands of years. And how that, for us in the West, it makes it so much more accessible for us because we're really evidence obsessed in some ways. But I guess this thirst for knowledge just kept unrolling from there. So I went from meditation studies more deeply into the mindfulness side, then into the embodiment practices. But the real education, I have to say, or the culmination of all of that knowledge, came through getting sick and having to recover. Because before that, I was still really stuck in the intellectualizing of all that information. But in order to recover, I had to learn how to embody that knowledge and to put it into my daily practice and to integrate those learnings into being, which is where the real change happens. We can, especially in this social media world, we can just have this like grabs of information coming at us, and it gives us those dopamine hits, and we want more, but we never really have the opportunity to sit in it and learn how to be that learning, to filter it through to a nervous system level where it really becomes the change. So that was my greatest education, I would say, and most challenging. Yeah, that was actually one of my next questions. So yeah, you touched on it for a second there. So part of your story mentions of a, chronic illness that you went through, and on your website, it said it was about a 4-year recovery. Can you talk a little bit more about that? What are some of those biggest challenges you faced, and, how did you overcome them? So, I was diagnosed with chronic fatigue syndrome, which takes a while to get a diagnosis for. After getting, glandular fever and then a whole lot of infections, just getting sick for a while and eventually just never getting better, only getting worse. And the symptoms of chronic fatigue syndrome are multi-system disruption. So your digestive system and your nervous system and your endocrine, just all your systems are just on high alert all of the time. And you feel, for me, I felt like it was the worst day of my life every day, and you never know when it's going to get better. And I had a moderate case. Some people have it far worse. But through that experience, I connected with a spiritual teacher. I guess I made the decision at some point that either I'm going to stay sick forever, because that's what they tell you. They're like, it might take, on average, it takes 7 to 10 years for people to recover, and you might at best get to 80% recovered.
Do the doctors know what caused it?
Well, they don't really know much about it yet. It's been really understudied. Now after COVID, because it's got so many parallels with long COVID, there's more research going into it. But what they understand at this point is that there's a genetic susceptibility to it, and that it comes after a big illness or a big accident where your body gets some kind of shock. So they don't know much.
Wow.
But for me, on the spiritual side, and what I've come to understand is that from 30 years of living in fight or flight with undiagnosed PTSD, and my body never having the chance to really relax and repair, and having that high anxiety feeling be my norm, what felt like normal to me. And the coping mechanisms that I discovered of always overdoing, overachieving, more, people pleasing, all these habits were feeding into that nervous system dysregulation, which then sets off all the other systems to not really go.
Wow.
So eventually, it's like I was forced by life to sit in the dark, literally and figuratively, with myself and face all my demons and deal with all my stuff and make the conscious decision to heal on every level. And I took that to heart. A friend said to me at some point in my illness, if you just had to accept this and live with it, could you do that? And I was like, no. I couldn't. I would have, if I had to live with that forever. It's dark. It's definitely makes you question whether or not you want to still be here. I said, either I figure out how to get well, or I won't make it through. And so that's when I just dove in deep to doing the work. Facing everything that I had been running from for all those years, and really just getting into it and healing, deep healing. And so slowly, piece by piece, as I peeled back those layers and reprogrammed how I showed up in life, I started to recover.
I love that so much. Thank you for your vulnerability and sharing that story. I know that the listeners and so many people out there are going through a similar struggle in their life, and that's going to really help them and really resonate with them and hopefully help them avoid, reaching that stage of burnout,
Totally. The thing I find most interesting, and I looking back, I can see all the signs, but life, before it knocks you down that hard, it starts to whisper, and then it gets a little louder, it knocks at the door, being that's something to explore here. And eventually I just ignored so much of it that went bang. You find it and you learn. But I think if we can start to see our bodies for the wisdom keepers that they are, and the messages they're sending us way before it gets to that point, we can avoid having to learn from that harsher lesson.
Yeah, I love that so much. So would you be open or willing to talk more about the spiritual teachings, what that was? Or
Absolutely. So the teacher that I work with, Magdi, she channeled what she calls the universal truths. And they are 46 truths that are a philosophy for how you reshape your life. And obviously they have parallels with a lot of similar teachings around the world. Because at the core, all of the spiritual teachings come back to the same thing: unconditional love, unconditional acceptance. The thing that resonated with me about her particular teachings were that they're non-dogmatic. They're really about you in the world and how you show up for yourself and show up beyond that. So I can give you an example just of the first truth is that there are no mistakes.
No mistakes.
It took quite a few years to get through those teachings and really sit in the philosophical discussion of them, and how they play into my life and how they play into the lives that I see around me. But they came back to this understanding that life is happening for us, not to us. That we are here to expand. It's not a test. It's not a judgment. But the more that we can see it as the gift of our experience, the easier our way through life. And some of it was really challenging, in the midst of my deepest symptoms, she was like, this is the best thing that's ever happened to you. And at the time I was like, huh? Like, really? Like,
Yeah, you don't see that. Yeah.
Doesn't feel that great. But now I can see that it was a gift. I could have gone on the way I was going for a lifetime and never fully lived my life, as myself. I could have gone on to get much, not much more ill because I was really ill, but a more life-threatening illness that I couldn't have recovered from, or what it is. And this came through in the perfect timing, as it does, so that I could seize the opportunity to change and make changes. And it's just been so liberating. That's the thing I get most from it. Challenging, yes. Has it asked me to be more brave than I thought I could be? 100%. But it's been so worth it.
And so how many years ago was this?
So that was in the middle of my recovery. Mm-hmm. My timeline gets a bit messy because of the cognitive challenges of the illness. But it started around 2015. Okay. I actually met my teacher in the yoga teacher training that I was taking. She lives in Sweden, but her daughter was in Australia at the time, at the yoga school, and she came in just to teach one module. And when I met her, I had that feeling of, I know that person, but from some other life or experience, like just that.
Yeah.
And felt comfortable with her in a way that I hadn't really felt comfortable with anyone, or hardly anyone in my life, to go to those places and to hear her in a way that didn't feel like, even though when it was confronting, it was non-judgmental. Yeah. It was a safe space.
Yeah. Yeah. I know what you mean. Like sometimes you meet people in life and it's a stranger and you meet them for the first time. And there's just this odd, strange connection where you're like, I know this person from somewhere. It's very strange, from like a past life or something. When you were mentioning about the spiritual teachings, I thought you were going to say ayahuasca. I just went on an ayahuasca retreat a couple of weeks ago and changed my life.
I haven't tried it yet. I had intended to try it actually after my recovery. Mm-hmm. But then I fell pregnant unexpectedly, and I wasn't going to do that while I was pregnant. And then I'm a single mum, so I have not left my son alone in that way. Yeah. But I have started now to look into giving it a go. Yeah. I do think it would be a good experience. I don't think it's the only way. I think that it's enticing because it's like a fast track, but I don't know if that's necessarily the path for everybody.
Yeah, definitely.
And like anything, it's how we integrate it that actually makes the difference.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay. So when I think of someone like you, looking at your website and your Instagram and everything, I think of one word, the word authenticity. Can you define this word for our audience, and can you share what someone's life is like who is living authentically?
Absolutely. So to me, authenticity means being true to yourself. It means in order to get there, we have to make the conscious choice to almost like reorganize our sense of self, because all of us come up with these beliefs that we inherit or that we are told and then believe, and they become beliefs about ourselves. And the social conditioning of our family and our society, our community, and the invisible scripts of how you're meant to be or you should be. So in order to come back to who we truly are, we have to unpack all of those ideas and make a decision. Is this really aligned? Does it feel like physically feel aligned to who I am and who I want to be? Or is it just something that I've believed and then moved from there? And now that sounds simpler, but on another level, we also have to recalibrate on an emotional and physical level, because it's easy to just say, I'm going to think differently now, but we have to believe that we can be different, and we have to shift any wounds or emotions stuck in the body that prevent us from anchoring in those new beliefs. Yeah. So how it shows up then is by having consciously reshaped your belief system, reprogrammed your mind and your thoughts and your values, consciously choosing your values. Then you have a framework from which to make the choices in your life, from which to guide your decisions and your way of showing up. If we move from the unconscious, we just move from those invisible scripts and stories. And even if we think something different, our emotional brain runs the show.
Oh, yeah.
We work from reactivity.
Yeah. We
work from our armor and self-protective measures.
Yeah.
So it's like a re-education in yourself to get back to that authentic self, and have the courage to show up as that person, knowing that it's not always going to be received in the way you want to. Because when you show up authentically, if you're talking to someone who's really stuck in their shadow or in their constructs, it's triggering for them. They don't like it. It mirrors to them all the ways that they're not doing that.
Yeah.
But the payoff is having this full expression of self, this full experience of life. We can't numb our emotions selectively. So if you're numbing out the pain or the grief, you're numbing out the joy, you're numbing out the excitement, you're not getting to experience that full scope of life. If you are doing what you're supposed to do, you might get all those markers of a successful life, but it doesn't feel right.
Yeah.
Missing the deep meaning of what truly calls you.
Yeah.
And that's different for everyone.
Yeah.
And that's where I get to that point of helping people unpack their unique gifts. It's not everyone wants to go and have a massive impact on the whole world. For some people that sounds horrible. Maybe your impact is just in your family. Mm-hmm. Maybe your impact is just in your community, but that's still a huge impact.
Yeah.
And so many of us are driven, at least originally, by what we think is going to please our parents or look good to others or keep up with others. And then we get there and we're like depressed or anxious or just a bit numb.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't mean anything to us. It's deep meaning that really fuels that authentic life.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I like when you're talking, I can see the passion and I noticed a couple of times you point at your heart and your chest. And so I'd like to ask, I feel like in life, it's like a battle between your head and your heart, and I feel like with someone who lives authentically, it's like they feel, they feel it in their heart. Would you say that's safe to assume?
Totally safe to assume. They've even found now that I'm going to mess up the science a bit, but they've found that there's some cells in our heart that are able to have separate cognition to our mind. Isn't that amazing?
Wow. I heard even for your stomach too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Your gut instinct, right?
Yeah.
We have somewhere along the lines of science, they separated mind from body, but that's not a thing. Your mind is your body. It's all the same thing.
Yeah.
Your mind is part of your body. Your brain is in there. Like your spiritual self, your soul is beyond, well, I think is beyond just your physical form.
Mm-hmm.
But this form is what we're given to navigate our 3D life here. And which is, you can't ignore that part of life. Like that's what we're here to do. We're souls in a body for a reason.
Yeah.
And when we can connect back to heart and to instinct and to intuition, we can start seeing, like, using this vessel as our compass.
Yeah.
And I think our heart and our mind are only in a battle when we have disconnected from heart, because really heart and mind in alignment is a smoother path.
Yeah. So would you say that's pretty much your work right there, is helping people align their mind and their heart, right?
Yeah, and trust that gut instinct.
So could you tell us about some of the specific practices or techniques that you use to help people in your coaching sessions?
Yeah, definitely. I use a whole range of things. So the intuitive part comes in from, so hard to explain that spiritual stuff, isn't it? But that knowing, that claircognizance that's always been there, part of my healing and working with my spiritual teacher beyond learning her philosophy was learning how to honor my sensitivity and trust myself again.
Mm-hmm.
I was such a sensitive child, but I was also really learned early to armor up and numb out. So it's like I just disconnect. It was still there, but I disconnected from it. I ignored it. I shut it down. And part of that learning to be with myself was learning to honor how sensitive I was and take the measures I need to be able to tune in and not become a superpower rather than a hindrance to being in a world that's really not designed for sensitive people. Like, it's loud and there's everything's changing, like it smells everywhere, like it's a lot. But so part of it is tuning in energetically to where they are, and it's like I see the patterns from their experiences and their energy almost like pieces of a jigsaw puzzle coming together to see what's coming up now and where it's anchored in the past. What's the blockage? What needs to be shifted so that they can come back to neutral and then make conscious decisions from there. On the really practical side, some of the tools I use are mindfulness meditation, learning how to see our feelings as information, not direction. So there's nothing wrong with feelings. We're not meant to not have them, but they're not meant to drive every decision we make. They're meant to alert us to something that's going on so we can then make a conscious choice about how to move forward. So mindfulness is a big practice for learning to not get too attached to your thoughts and feelings, but use them as information. Reparenting work or inner child work, or in the shamanic field, they call it soul retrieval. Same word, same thing, but different words, to heal those parts of ourselves that are still acting from that young, wounded self and preventing us from stepping into our courage or backing ourselves or believing, that self-love, that healing, closing the gap between the parenting that we received and the parenting that we needed. So dealing with mother and father wounds. Another technique that I use is reframing our beliefs. So step by step, going through the beliefs about one particular thing, letting all of them just come up non-judgmentally, and then deciding, is that actually a truth? Is that something I want to take forward? What is the new belief I want to plant the seed of so that I can move forward in a way that supports me? And then almost like an incantation, repeating those new beliefs over and over and over again until we start to embody them. And then the piece that I think is vital is also the somatic embodiment work. So using visualization and other somatic tools to anchor this stuff, to see where we're feeling it in our physical body, because so many of us think our feelings, so that we can really shift on that physical level. Otherwise, we're just stuck in the ideas of it. So there's a whole lot of skills that I've brought from psychology, behavioral science, meditation, like all the things, somatics, that I use to deal with clients to help them on the path.
Yeah, those sound like some very powerful strategies. And what about how do you support individuals in feeling safe in their bodies and connected to their hearts? Would that be through meditation, or are there other strategies that you implement?
So it is a combination of those things that I mentioned, but a lot of that nervous system regulation comes interconnected with those things. So part of the reparenting work is tapping in on a physical level that like our memories and our emotions get stuck in the body. And we might grow up, but if there's still a part of us that feels unsafe, if there's still an unsafe 5-year-old stuck in your body living there, and that stuff is triggered, you are that 5-year-old, emotionally, physically, in the moment, in your nervous system, you are that little person. So we take empowered parts of ourselves and go back and reparent that, to give ourselves what that little person needed.
Wow. Yeah. And
it is really, it shifts us physically, mentally, emotionally in a really powerful way. Just to let those little parts be seen and heard and held. Part of that feeling safe in your body is learning how to hold sacred space for yourself. Be that. I don't want my clients to be with me forever. I teach them how to continue on with this work ongoing. Something I'm passionate about is creating lasting change. And obviously it's going to keep happening. Sometimes there are things going to happen beyond our control. But it's giving us the grounding, the roots to be able to manage no matter what happens, the tools to come back to time and time again, so that we're not thrown by life when it does its crazy, uncertain thing.
Yeah. Yeah. To me, it almost seems like common sense, like it almost seems like common sense. Like people should understand and know that a lot of their problems in their adult lives stems from their childhood. But oftentimes a lot of people they don't even think about that, and, I think
No, we
that's
should
what,
be taught this from little people.
yeah.
Or, I mean, thankfully it's changing piece by piece, but we're showing up for kids in a different way so that hopefully they won't have to do as much work later down the line.
Yeah.
Because reactive people, which, I was that person, it's not from a place of judgment, but we just go on, triggering each other, trigger, just blaming the world outside instead of taking responsibility for our role in it. And our power lies in shifting our role in anything. That's the only thing you can really change.
Yeah. So, can you share one of your favorite success stories and how your teachings made a difference in their life?
Sure, I can give it, I guess, more of a candid example.
Okay.
I had a client who came to me with severe social anxiety. She had just come off the back of a pretty toxic relationship, and she was getting to the point where just going out anywhere was feeling overwhelming. She was having physical symptoms beyond the anxiety. And within, I think it was 4 months, she applied to go on, one of those reality TV shows.
Oh, yeah.
I think
Oh, yeah.
which I was like, it's such a light-hearted example, but to go from not wanting to go anywhere
Yeah.
to national television on a
Wow.
show where, like, inevitably you're going to be judged, I
Yeah.
thought, wow, that's a huge shift in such a
Yeah.
short time. So that's, I guess, a fun example,
Uh-huh.
but the more real, that is real, but the places where it really inspires me is seeing people going from feeling stuck in a job that feels just mindless, like, I'm just going to do this forever, what am I doing here, to doing work in their field that is making changes in their field and that they feel passionate and inspired about.
Wow.
And sometimes even in things like their relationships, they're still in the same relationship, but the way that they feel in that relationship is so profoundly different.
Wow.
And relax into the joy of the moments. They can feel comfortable receiving back, not just giving all the time. They can see their extended family and it not feel like a burden and just like a trigger fest.
Yeah.
They can enjoy being with those people because they've learned how to have boundaries and hold their own. So it's not just like this explosion.
Yeah.
So there are countless examples of, they've gone from being stuck in a role that they felt like they're being overlooked for promotions and this and that, to starting their own business and growing it to a point where it's thriving, that they can sell it and move on to the next passion project.
Yeah.
It's giving them this like fuel to really go after what they want.
Wow.
I find that really, it's just the most rewarding work.
Yeah. So, do you do just like one-on-one coaching, or do you see couples too, or is it just one-on-one?
I do one-on-one, and I have a hybrid group program coming up, which is a mixture of one-on-one and group.
Nice.
It's intensive. So the one-on-ones I do are more of a mentoring style. It's fortnightly sessions, and we unpack things over a longer course of time. The group intensive, which is running in June, and is going to run 2 times a year, is an intensive. So we intentionally go through our dogma, our like step by step as a group held together, but it's a deep dive. So it is a shorter experience and more intense, and it just depends. For that resonates for some people who are like, rip the Band-Aid off, I'm ready.
Yeah.
And for others who want to do it more gradually and just one-on-one, there's the mentorship.
So is that, I was looking at the programs that you offer on your website. So was that both of them, the Bloom and then the Sacred Space Holders Club?
The Sacred Space Holders Club I've put on hold for the moment.
Oh, okay.
And Bloom has actually been renamed as Homecoming, because that felt like the gist of it is coming home to ourselves. Sacred Space Holders Club will be coming, but probably not till next year, because I just had more on that I could manage.
Okay.
But that's going to be more of a mastermind program.
Nice.
Where people tune in once a fortnight just for a group coaching call. So you can keep going with the work beyond that intense level.
Yeah.
So you can keep accountable. and keep connecting with like-minded people. Because part of the journey, I think, is if you're not surrounded by other people doing the work, it can feel a little bit lonely, or like there's still that fish out of water.
Yeah.
So just having that anchoring in
Yeah.
with other people doing the work, I think is really supportive.
I got to ask you. So just a second ago, you said once a fortnight. Is that how you say week in Australia?
It's bi-weekly, every other week.
Fortnight. Yeah. Oh, okay. All right. What about, can you explain the concept of embodiment and its significance in personal transformation and healing?
Yes. So what embodiment comes back to is that idea of not just intellectualizing the ideas, not just speaking them and understanding them, but bringing them into practice, bringing them into the physical body and into the way that you move through the world. So a simple example, I guess, of embodying your boundaries would be not just saying them to people, but having the courage then, if they're not heard, to act upon them. So an example would be, if you're going to continue talking to me like that, I'm going to hang up the phone, and not just going like, stop talking to me like that, stop talking to me like that, but being like, in the conversation, and now I'm going to come back to you another time. It's embodying those boundaries.
Wow, yeah.
Having the courage and to sit with the discomfort of it and still stretch your nervous system to a point where you can grow into that process. It is taking your values and not just going, oh, I have this value, but really going, okay, how does that shape how I'm going to move forward? So one of my highest values is courage. So when it comes to making decisions, I'm like, am I making this decision? Is this the courageous decision? Am I saying yes or no out of fear? Am I saying it because of expectations for others? Or am I going to do what's true to me, even if it's so scary?
Yeah.
So the embodiment level is so important, because that's what I think brings that real change. Same with your journey with the Aya. It brings these huge shifts, but unless you integrate them and embody them, it's just something that you experienced and then you move on.
Yeah.
It's the practice it's the habits that you form to integrate those shifts.
Yeah, definitely. So what advice would you give to someone who is just starting their own healing journey or seeking their authentic self?
Okay. I would say that learning how to self-awareness is always the first step to any healing journey. And in order to really know yourself, you have to, as much as possible, let go of judgment, because nobody learns from shame. Not us, not kids, nobody. And the more we start to really honor who we have been and the experiences that shaped us into this person without judging them, the faster we can move towards where we want to go.
Okay, I love it. How do you see the interplay between the mind, body, and spirit in the process of healing and self-discovery?
Ooh. So I think that the mind and body, as I said, are the same thing. And I think a lot of our physical symptoms are manifestations of our emotional state and our nervous system. I think that our soul calling is the part of us that is unchangeable. It is the part that it doesn't care how you get there, but it's going to niggle for you to get there either way.
Yeah.
On a mind or body level, we often do choose the hard way to get there, and there's probably more easy ways, but the soul doesn't care. It's not judging you for how you get there.
Yeah.
It is going to push you in the direction that you're meant to go, that what you're here to do.
Yeah.
You're going to come up against those triggers time and time again until you learn. Yep. And it's a cycle, like they'll come up again even after you've learned to test you and get to the next layer. But the sooner you learn, that block gets out of the way, because it's your soul path. You're here to do this stuff, and however you choose to do it, that's your mind and body moving through the world. And often we have been taught to shut down that voice, but it's like the more we start to tune back in and use it and trust
Yeah.
it. It's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that so much. So what is one practice or habit that you believe has the power to positively impact everyone's well-being, regardless of their circumstances?
Okay. I think tuning in physically is probably the simplest place to start. So anyone can do this. It doesn't cost any money. It doesn't take, you could do it for a minute a day. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter.
Uh-huh.
But learning how to feel the sensations of our feelings. We call them feelings, but we think them. You need to feel them in your physical body.
Okay.
Our feelings happen in here. What does it feel like? And regularly, I have to, when I'm working with clients, I have to like really get to know like, what is the physical sensation of that feeling? You're feeling anxious. Where do you physically feel it? What does it feel like?
Uh-huh.
And learning to tune back into this wisdom keeper that is our body.
Yeah.
Is that first step to tapping back into the knowledge. And sometimes if we've been so numb for most of our lives, it does feel scary. But knowing that feelings are they're temporary states. They pass through us. The only time that we become, we spiral and get into an anxiety spiral is when we create feelings about our feelings or thoughts about our thoughts.
Yeah.
So the two, I know you said one practice, but I'm going to throw three at you. So feeling into your body.
Okay.
Learning to do some controlled breath work. So even if it's just inhaling for 4, exhaling for 7, for 4 breaths, that's 1 minute of breathing.
Okay.
If you're feeling anxious, to calm back into the body. And then that mindfulness practice of noticing your thoughts and feelings without creating a story about them, without having a feeling about your feeling or a thought about your thought.
Yeah.
That's the simplest place. Anybody can start with that.
Yeah. That's perfect. I've been in the habit lately, especially since the ayahuasca retreat, of just planting my bare feet in the ground, going in nature and grounding myself. And, I've been doing that every day now, and I notice a difference.
It makes that even having done this work for a decade, I still need reminders for that sometimes.
Uh-huh.
Days when I just feel like it's not even just tired, but it's just not grounded.
Yeah.
My next door neighbor's like, just go lie in the sun for a minute. And I'll lie down on the grass and just like, oh yeah, like, oh
yeah.
Here I am back in my body.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like nature, Mother Earth, has all the answers. She can give us all the answers we're looking for. And sometimes we're so preoccupied with our work life and our career and everything that we often forget and overlook the simple thing of Mother Nature, Mother Earth.
Some of the things I've been learning lately, like, that just crazy things, like children who spend more time in the sun than they do under fluorescent light grow bigger and faster.
Like a plant, like a tree.
Exactly.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So much of our modern life works against how we're shaped to be in the world.
Yeah.
We overcomplicate these ideas so much, there need to be some new modality that we have to explore.
Mm-hmm.
You need to go do these ice baths or this breath work. You need to breathe and be conscious of your breathing. You can splash cold water on your face. You can start so simply. It doesn't have to be the next big thing.
Yeah. Yeah. So just a second ago, you were talking about how you really emphasize to people to feel their feelings, right? And maybe you have an answer. I don't know. I'm wondering, like, what led me to ayahuasca was first therapy, and what led me to therapy was I started to have a little bit of anxiety, and I would feel it in my chest. Like why does anxiety, show up as a feeling in our chest?
I don't know if it does that for everybody, but I think different parts of our bodies hold different emotions. So a lot of the time, feelings in our chest or especially in our lung or that heart chakra area, are feelings of grief that need to come up.
Wow.
So with our feelings, they can be layered. Maybe if there's this, and grief doesn't have to be necessarily about a person passing.
Yeah.
It can be about a way of life that you've had to let go, a part of yourself that you have to grieve, a part of yourself that's not being fully expressed. There's all these different ways it can be explained or be held in the body.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes the that feeling of anxiety in that chest can also be this chronic suppression of rage, of being never being allowed to express what didn't work for you or what made you angry.
Oh, wow.
Even from these little tiny people. So I use the body a lot in the work that I do, and there's so much symbolism in it.
Oh, yeah.
So
yeah, that makes sense, like, because I've gone throughout my whole life just kind of like bottling things. I don't express my issues and stuff. I just bottle it in, and so that's kind of why I was just like sitting there.
Yeah, and they say that's, I've got a heavy chest or I've got a broken heart. Like, these are what language that we use about the body, but we've needed it from the reality of it.
Yeah.
It physically affect you. It sits like a weight on your chest.
Yeah. So in your opinion, what are some essential qualities that individuals need to cultivate in order to truly thrive in their life?
So self-awareness is definitely that first one.
Yeah.
Discernment, I think, is also an interesting one. Learning how to tell the difference between what's yours and what's not yours, in terms of beliefs and values, but also in terms of what people are projecting to you or what you're projecting.
Yeah.
Even a lot of people who come up really sensitive have so many empathic abilities, but learning how to draw a line between what you can feel and what's your business to get involved in.
Oh, yeah.
Really different. I was empathic from the word go, but I felt like everyone's problems were my own. And if you're filtering everyone else's feelings through you, if you take out the filter from your water filter or your vacuum cleaner, that's dirty.
Yeah.
It's got all the junk on it.
Yeah.
To be having these energetic boundaries. So I think discernment is really important. And I guess one of the other ones is just integrity. So the more that the more trustworthy we are with ourselves, the more we do what we say we're going to do and keep promises to ourselves, the more we build that self-trust. That's really grounding for us. That gives us that strength and courage and safety in ourselves.
Yeah.
And then the more integrity we have in the way we relate to other people in the world, the more we can see clearly who's not standing in that integrity and have the right boundaries to, create that healthy dynamics from our end.
Yeah.
And choose to be involved or not involved in different things that show up.
Yeah, definitely. So what about, how do you stay inspired and motivated in your own work, especially when facing challenges or setbacks?
Well, I have a son now and I'm bringing him up on my own. And that is definitely a huge part of my why. I want to create for him a world where he comes up feeling emotionally safe, where he can be himself in the world in a way that works for him. And to help, the more I feel like I work with dreamer doers, people that are, have had their challenges coming up, but they still have this niggling feeling of wanting to change the world for better, even in their little part of the world. Yeah. And I want that better world for him and for me and for all of the children coming up. So that's a huge part of my why. And with the challenges that come up, I'm just so passionate. Like, the person I was before this, the start of my awakening, I think our awakening is ongoing. But the person who I was not a happy person. I would never want to be that person again. It was not an enjoyable way to go through life.
Wow.
So even when the challenges come up, and they do, there's no going back. It's like once you've opened your eyes, you can't close them again.
Yeah.
So it inspires me. And I see the potential in people I work with, and I have to give them the space. I facilitate their change. I don't make them change. I'm just their guide to do the work.
Yeah.
But I can see how it could be for them. And watching that unfold, it's a gift.
Yeah.
It keeps me going.
Wow. It's like looking at you right now, looking at you in your eyes and looking at your face. Like, I can't even imagine you being that other person. It's crazy.
It's like sometimes I even refer to refer to me as her. Like she did these things, especially with a child. I'm like, she went through that. I'm like, no, you went through that. It was like different lifetimes ago.
Yeah.
But it got me here. So even that, I went through a lot of challenges very young, and sometimes our traumas and our challenges bring on more traumas and challenges as we grow up until they're faced.
Yeah.
Everything that I went through got me here. And I really like the person I am and the work that I do in the world. So I can see how it all happened for me, even if I wouldn't wish it on anybody else.
Yeah. Okay. I guess kind of closing it out, what is your vision for the future of your work? And can you send the listeners like a final message of love and healing?
Sure. My hope for the work is to keep growing in the way that I share it.
Mm-hmm.
And my capacity for doing that. And that will come both with growing my reach, but also with my son getting a little bit older. So I have more capacity.
Yeah.
And the ultimate goal is that heal people. So the people that I help, they're going to help in their way or in their niche, making the changes. And that spreads, like that pebble in the still water ripples out.
Yeah.
So that's my greatest hope for the work, that it starts with me and keeps spreading outward. And the message that I would like to leave people with is that when we can see life happening as for us, not to us, and embrace the idea that the only thing that we can change is our role in anything, but it's also the most powerful thing, then you can change anything that you like in your life. You can do anything with perseverance if you come back to you being the catalyst for that change. Yeah.
Wow. I love it. All right. Well, I want to thank you, Tiffany. You've been an absolute pleasure, an absolute joy to speak with. You have a lot of great insights to share with the world. So I'm happy to speak with you today and help share your message. I want to thank the listeners for sticking around to the end. So Tiffany, please tell everyone where to find you. And I'll also add all of your website and everything to the description of the video.
Amazing. Thank you. And thank you so much for having me today. It's been a real joy to speak with you. The best place to find me is on Instagram at tiffany.wylder, which is WYLDER. Or my email is tiffanywylder@gmail.com. Or my website is tiffanywylder.com. It's all the same. And yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's been really great to talk with you.
Thank you so much. You have a great day.
You too.
Bye.